Hello crafty friends, this is the Papered Chef here. In today's Brother ScanNCut tutorial, you are going to learn how to create Shrinky Dinks using your Brother ScanNCut CM350 or ScanNCut 2. The Shrinky Dinks we'll be making are these cute little bunnies right here from the Welcome Easter stamp set by Stampin' Up. You always want to use bigger stamped images with clear defined lines around them when you make your Shrinky Dinks. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do the stamping, the coloring, the cutting, the baking, and we're going to watch them shrink, how to remove them from the oven and use them on your project. So I'll show you some examples of how to use Shrinky Dinks on your projects. Okay, so let's get started because in this section, I'm going to show you how to do the stamping part. Now when you get Shrinky Dink material, which will be linked in the description, it has a little bit of a slippery side and a little bit of a smooth side. Now, they probably claim that both sides are the same because even in their instructions you can draw on both sides. But I found one side to be a little bit rougher and I think that's better for stamping. So far I've taken this bunny and I've put him onto a stamping block D, okay, and I'm using Stazon black ink. Use Stazon black permanent ink when stamping. It'll be linked in the description. It's a really good permanent ink. Now, it'll stain your stamps though, so you have to use the cleaner, which I'll show you in the next step. Because after I go clean my stamp, I'll show you how I cleaned it. But for this part, I just want to show you how to stamp the bunny a few times. Now, because the stamp is bigger than the stamp pad, I'm turning the stamp over like that, and I'm tapping. You know it's good coverage when you look at it and it's shiny. So see that shine? That's how you know you have enough ink on your bunny. And you know, for this, I use a little bit extra ink because I want there to be really good bunnies. I don't have a pencil trick to use, right? This is good. I want there to be a big thick line because it'll shrink anyway. You want the detail. All right, so I'm doing that again. I'll do it a couple times. And you know, you have to be careful to stand over the top of it so your paper doesn't slip. I hold it for a few seconds. I lift up. You'll hear that little sound. When you do lift up on your Shrinky Dink material, hold your finger on the Shrinky Dink material. I'm going to do it one more time. Now, if you're staying at home a lot and crafting, this is a great project for the whole family. I love making Shrinky Dinks. I made them when I was a kid. Now, you can use, if you don't have stamps handy, but maybe you have some Shrinky Dink material handy, go ahead and just draw things with a Sharpie marker onto this material. You can cut it out with the ScanNCut the same way I'm showing you. All right, so here's what's going on. Because I don't like my viewers to have to wait for me while I do everything, and because these need to dry for about 10 minutes, and this just from experience of messing up enough of these, I'm going to just go ahead and stamp the rest of the page of bunnies with giving them a little bit of distance between them. And I didn't need that much distance between them, but giving them a little bit of distance because I will put a little outline distance around them. I'm going to stamp them. I'm going to let them dry for 10 minutes. And when I come back, the next section of the video will show you how to color these. I'm going to show you the tools I use to color the Shrinky Dinks with. Okay, so see you in the next section. In this section of the tutorial, I'm going to show you how to color your bunnies using our Alcohol Blends markers or Sharpie markers in sort of pastel colors that I found in this really fun collection. All right, now first, before I start to color the rest of the bunnies, I've colored some. I want to show you how I cleaned my stamp because if you don't clean your stamp right away, I did this while my bunnies were drying, you know, it'll be stained black. Okay, so here's my bunny and there's the rubber, and so I put it under the sink, I rinsed it off, and then the bunny was wet. Then I took my Stazon stamp cleaner. Now this is stained because I rub it all over my stamp like this, you know, and don't squeeze it because there's a lot of liquid in here, but you don't want to lose the liquid. So don't squeeze it, just rub it on there, rinse it off again. They'll be black all over your sink. Do it again, rub it, rinse it off, maybe 3 times. You'll see the black ink come off your stamp. So you need to clean your stamps well if you're using Stazon ink. And so when you get your, you know, I'll link to my materials. When you get your Stazon ink, get your Stazon cleaner. Now this is just great ink. I mean, I should have mentioned this earlier, but this is permanent ink. So like you can use it on porcelain and glass and other kinds of materials that you can't use other inks on. All right, so now let's get into the coloring. So here's my stamp, and you're gonna notice that, hey, wait a minute, Paper Chef, the bunny ears, you know, like here, when I stamped it, the bunny ears were on the right. Yes, that's true. So what I did is, because it is acetate, I decided to color on, I flip it over to color. Okay, so here's, I stamped on this side, and we'll scan and cut on this side too, because this side's clearer. It has better, well-defined lines. But when you color, I'm going to color on this side, and that's because now I would never really normally color using alcohol blends. I'm going to start with the Balmy Blue, by the way. I'm going to do Balmy Blue while I'm talking. Okay, so normally you wouldn't do alcohol inks on, like Stazon's an alcohol ink, and then these are alcohol markers. Now, I normally wouldn't use alcohol markers with alcohol ink, but that's why I flipped it over. I don't want these to run together. I'm going to hit that again with the dark. Now, another thing I want to mention, I'm using Balmy Blue. You can't really tell, right? When I'm coloring, you can't really tell there's a big difference here. And I'm also loosely coloring. I mean, it's not like my normal coloring. I don't have to worry about staying inside the lines very much, because this is just so light. Now, it's Shrinky Dink, so the color will get more concentrated as these shrink. So you can't really even tell it's blue. You have to do a few layers of these. With the alcohol markers, you need a few layers. With these Sharpies, you don't. In fact, let me just show you the Sharpies now. It's not on the camera view, but here. I did the bottom ones in Sharpies, and I only needed one layer of ink, because the Sharpie ink, permanent ink, it was fine. It just needed one layer. But when I do the blends at the top, sometimes needed a couple more layers. All right, we're back to, I was using Balmy Blue, and I'm just using the light and darks. I'm putting the dark in the middle sections and in the ears, in the feet. All right, so that's good. Happy with that. Next, I'm going to do, let's see, Highland Heather, light and dark. I always start with the dark. Each of our Stampin' Blends has a thick side, it's a brush side, and it has a fine tip side. So I always use I'm just trying to use the brush side for these, because the ink just goes on a little better onto the Shrinky Dink. It looks like it caught on that time, the ink, so I think I might be able to do one layer for this one. All I want is a little tint of color to show up. That's it. If a little tint of color shows up, I can just kind of go with it. And it's going to get baked. And when they get baked, they shrink and the color concentrates. It's kind of magical, and that's why I think this is one of those crafts that even kids would like. But of course with adult supervision, because you can't really have kids do this on their own, right? I'm just going to take this Flirty Flamingo, put a little bit of pink in their noses. All right, so this is Flirty Flamingo. I'm going to use the dark side. This one goes on a lot better. See, I've been using these other markers a lot lately, the Highland Heather and the Balmy Blue, because I've been doing a lot of Easter projects, so it's probably time to replace them. They are not refillable. Like our regular markers, you can refill the regular set of markers. But these, you have to just get new ones. So I've already gone through a couple markers, not many. I've really only gone through a few extra markers out of my whole set. Hard to run these dry, but when you color like 100 bunnies, you know, you can run something dry. Okay, there you go. So that's the alcohol blend section. Now let me move that up. Okay, so that's alcohol blends, top one, Balmy Blue, Highland Heather, Flirty Flamingo, and I'm just gonna write that in the description as well. And then now I'll show you the Sharpies. So we'll do another green bunny. And for the Sharpie, I'm just taking a bright green marker. These are so much easier to color with, I think. And I'm just leaving the sections white, like the bottom of the feet. I'm just leaving those white. And again, whenever you're doing Shrinky Dinks, always start out with large stamped images, or you're going to have a hard time, you know, seeing the detail after they shrink. Okay, so that's good. I only need to hit that once, and then I'm going to just do the pink noses while I'm here. Do all the pink noses. Forgot to put a pink nose in that one. Let's see. Do I have all the pink noses? Yes. All right, let's see what color we'll make this. I'm going to make this bunny pink while I'm at it. Okay, so bunny is pink. This is a good marker. The color goes on well. And sometimes you hear, see that squeaking noise? That's okay. When you draw onto plastic or acetate. All right, so why do I have a black Sharpie marker here? Why do I have this marker? Well, if you've been watching my tutorials on YouTube, I talk about the pencil trick whenever there's gaps and the ScanNCut can't recognize something. So if we try to scan and cut this in next, which we're going to be doing, we're going to be cutting these out with our CM350. If we go to cut these out and some of the bunnies are not recognized, then instead of the pencil trick, when you have Shrinky Dinks, you need to use the Sharpie trick. And what I would do is I would fill in any gaps. Now that's already filled in with the ink. But any little gaps, meaning this little bunny, in fact, it's easier to show you on the stamp set itself. I'm going to show you on the Welcome Easter stamp set. These little gaps I would have to fill in with a Sharpie marker because it needs a solid, well-defined black line, and that's not a solid line. Now it is because of the way the ink goes onto the Shrinky Dink material. It's pretty much, it seems like it's done it. I'm going to just, I mean, it seems to me like all the gaps are enclosed. I mean, for good measure, I can do the Sharpie in a couple places. But if not, if they don't get recognized, then I'll use the Sharpie some more. Okay, so that's good. So now, what I'm going to do next is let these dry. And then in the next step of this tutorial, I'll show you how to cut these out with your CM350 or ScanNCut 2. And we're going to be scanning and cutting them on this side. But because the ink is going to be facing down onto the mat, I want to make sure the ink is dry so it doesn't stain my Brother ScanNCut cutting mat. All right, thank you. See you soon. Now that I'm all done coloring the bunnies and they've dried, I'm going to show you how to cut out the Shrinky Dink material using your Brother ScanNCut CM350 or ScanNCut 2. Now what I've done so far is I've taken the piece of Shrinky Dink material and I have attached it. See, all those are colored. I colored them all. They've all dried for about 10 minutes or so. At least let them dry that long. Mine have dried longer. I've taken it and I put a piece of painter's tape on the top of the Shrinky Dink material. My mat, even though my mat's kind of sticky, it's not sticky enough to hold this when you cut deep into things. There's a chance of it slipping. Now to make the scan better, whether you have a dedicated scanning mat or not, it doesn't really matter. This is what I needed to do. I'm putting a piece of Whisper White, see that behind it. Now I don't want to, I can tape this down temporarily, but when I'm cutting, I'm not going to keep the Whisper White underneath there. I'm going to be pulling it out. But just so it stays steady, I'm going to put it under the tape a little bit. And I'll go ahead and tape that down as well. So don't cover your registration marks. That's those numbers up there. They're needed to help the scanner know where to scan. And let's see, I'm only for good measure, just so you see what I'm doing. I'm gonna tape down at the very bottom, just for good measure. And now my material will not slip when it's scanning. I'm gonna tape it even better, the acetate part, the Shrinky Dink material, even better after I pull the Whisper White cardstock out. But right now, I'm only just taping it down just for the scanning purposes. All right, so we have our focus in there. I've turned off my external light so you can really see the screen well. When you turn on your machine, you're going to see pattern and scan. We're going to select scan. We're going to cut out the Shrinky Dinks. We're directly cutting them. We're not saving anything, so we're going to use direct cut. Okay, we're going to store it. This is just asking where do you want to store the information. We're going to store it on our machine. Black and white recognition mode is fine, even though the bunnies are colored. You have well-defined black lines. And one more thing to mention is I'm scanning them with the ink side up. So the ear is on the right. Because the ink side up is better. Like the Stazon ink is better if you scan it ink side up, rather than the color side up. Where I colored them with the alcohol markers and the Sharpies, because you have really more well-defined line if the Stazon ink is facing up. All right, so black and white recognition mode, because we have good contrast between the foreground and the background. And we're going to click start. If you've been watching my channel, you know about my pencil trick. That's enclosing any gaps. So if our bunnies are not recognized, you can always, sorry it's kind of loud. You'll notice this machine's much louder than the STX models. But if something's not recognized, you can always fill in those little gaps with a Sharpie marker, just as you would using my pencil trick I've taught about on this channel. But let's see, it looks like it did a pretty good job. So we're going to say okay. It got them all. But if it didn't get them all, well, I've already used the Sharpie trick, but I'm saying if you're doing Shrinky Dinks, and I've already used the Sharpie trick to fill in any gaps, but if it didn't get them all, you'd fill in those gaps. Okay, a few more little things to do whenever you're scanning stamped images or Shrinky Dinks or anything. So we first want to enclose, we want to select the area where the bunnies are. Okay, that's just to keep us from having to cut extra areas. And it's also going to have, it helps us clean up what's being cut, because you can tell it selected some dirt on my mat. We even want to get rid of that piece of tape there. So we want to ignore object size first. So first ignore object size. Now the bunnies are a couple inches tall, so you can ignore object size up to the size of your bunny, technically, but we just need to ignore, let's ignore any stray bits that are about an inch. If you ignore objects that are too big, you're ignoring the very thing you're trying to scan in. That's good enough. It'll get rid of some stray bits. Okay, then we want to add an outline distance. That's this button here. When you're making Shrinky Dinks, I recommend 0.04 outline distance. This will be in the description. Oh, one bunny. We didn't get this bunny down there. No problem. I'm going to catch him later. You know what? I think it's because when I made a selection around it, I cut off that bunny. That was my fault, because the scanner had caught the bunny. I think I'm the one that might have cut him off. But it's okay. So we have a 0.04, right? Did we have that? 0.04 outline distance. And now we're going to say, okay. And if you need to still get rid of stray bits. Oh, there's the bunny. He's back. Isn't that funny? Sometimes this machine amazes me. My bunny's back. We're not going to question why he's back, but he's back. I have all 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 bunnies. Yes. Now this edit, if you want to go in here and edit, you can trash any extra stray bits that you don't want. But we have only the bunnies, so we're happy. This is good. Now let's show you what else to do. We have to hit cut, but before I hit start, I'm going to hit cut and I'm going to hit start. I need to do a couple more things to my mat and my blade. Okay, so all you're going to miss is me, just me hitting start. It's going to take 2 minutes. Well, actually, I'll show you me hitting start, but we won't make you wait the whole 2 minutes while it cuts. Here's what you need to do. You need to do a couple things. You need to take the white paper away and tape down the bunny some more. Tape down the acetate, because like I said, this is thick. So let's take that. Let's lift up just this tape, and I'm going to take off the Whisper White. That really did a good job helping me scan. But make sure when you pull this white paper out that this doesn't move, right? You leave that piece of tape on the top. Don't try to rearrange your bunnies, because it just got done scanning, remember? We just got done scanning, and they're in the scanner's going to cut in a certain spot. So obviously you don't want to move your bunnies, but hey, maybe it's not obvious. Just letting you know. So I'm going to go ahead and tape the whole, I'm going to tape down the sides. And even when it gets the first couple bunnies cut, I'm going to be rubbing in the parts, not on the bunny itself, but I'm going to be rubbing right there, to make sure it doesn't slip, because when you have real thick material. Okay, next thing you need to do is set your blade depth. I thought I was going to need the deep cut blade for these, as I have with magnet material and acetate in the past, but I was able to use the regular blade. After this, maybe in the next part of the video I could show you what a deep cut blade looks like, but I'm just letting you know that I'm using the standard blade. But experimentation led me to a blade depth of 8. So that's what you need for the Shrinky Dink material. To set your blade depth, it's probably on if you had been just cutting paper, it was on a 3 or 4, possibly 5. So you go like this. To set your blade depth, you go up to a 12, always turn it back up to 12, and then turn it back down. So a blade depth to 8 is good for cutting Shrinky Dink material. And 7 was not deep enough, 9 was too deep. Oops, just dropped it. And you can even see the little bit of a blade sticking out, which is what you want. That little bit of a blade sticking out is going to help us with that Shrinky Dink material. Okay, if your blade is not very sharp, maybe you need to experiment. Every machine has a different personality, as I've said many times before. So let's see. I think I got my whole thing covered, and I can show you that. And I can start. Then we'll come back and we'll remove them. See? So I've really put tape everywhere. I'm afraid that I don't want anything to slip on this mat. Temperamental machines. Temperamental when you're cutting thick materials. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to hit start. And then I'll see you in a couple minutes where I'm going to remove these, or not remove them. I'm going to see you in a couple minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit start. I'm going to cut these. Then I'm going to meet you in my kitchen for the next part of the video, where we will bake our Shrinky Dinks. Okay, so see you in a few minutes. Now I'm in my kitchen where I have lined a baking sheet with aluminum foil, and I'm gonna bake the Shrinky Dinks. I just wanna show you what happened. A couple of the bunnies lost their feet when I pulled them off the mat, but that's okay because I'm gonna try to heat these another way because some of my YouTube viewers told me about a different way to heat Shrinky Dinks. So we'll use those two with the missing feet, heat them another way. But what I'm about to do with the baking sheet is how I usually heat Shrinky Dinks is I'm gonna put this in the oven at 325 and it's gonna bake from 1 to 3 minutes. While it's baking, I wanna open the oven so you can watch the Shrinky Dinks in action. My Shrinky Dinks have been baking for about 1 minute and they're already starting to curl up. I'm gonna open the oven and let you get an idea of what these look like as they're shrinking. They're so much fun to watch shrink. See, and they're curling up, so they're not quite done yet. I'm gonna zoom in there so you get an idea. So you can just watch them in action. I'm gonna shut my oven and we'll see you at the counter after I pull these out in about 1 more minute. My Shrinky Dinks are out of the oven. I'm gonna take off my pot holder and I just wanna show you a little trick. If they're not flat, which mine are really flat, they're really nice, you take a piece of foil and you flatten out your Shrinky Dinks. And the foil will keep your hand from getting burnt, but don't let kids do this. Let this be an adult thing because even though you're using foil, it's still kind of hot. All right, so next I'm gonna show you one more way of heating up our Shrinky Dinks. And then I'm going to show you some projects you can make with these little cuties. Thank you. Hello, crafty friends. I'm back in my craft room. And I started experimenting with another technique to make the Shrinky Dinks, and that is using the heat tool. So I'm using the heat tool from Stampin' Up. It's the embossing tool. And 3 of my viewers from YouTube suggested that I try the heat tool. So I just need to practice it much more before I'm able to show this to you. So I was able to successfully do this. I was able to fix my duck from the other day. I had done another tutorial on how to create Shrinky Dinks with this Fable Friend stamp set. And one of my Shrinky Dinks was I tried using the toaster oven, and he was all curled up, so I was able to fix him. So the heat tool works really good for fixing your curled up Shrinky Dinks. However, I could not master the concept of trying to get the Shrinky Dinks to heat right. I tried low and high heat, and my bunnies got all curled up. So these are the 2 I tried using the heat tool with, but that's just because I don't know what I'm doing with that tool. And I know how to do it in the oven, so back to just doing it in the oven. I can't show you the heat tool right now, but that is a suggestion. So play with that technique. Now, one of my viewers, Annette, said, hold the pokey tool into the hole. And I did have a hole in the bunny's ear. I did create a hole with this Label Me Fancy punch, and it's a little tag punch. So I did create a hole because the regular hole puncher was too big. And so anyway, that still, even though I used my take your pick tool, I used the Label Me Fancy punch. I held the hole in the bunny's ear. My bunny still came out all deformed. But that's okay because we live and learn and we're crafters. And hopefully, you're home and experimenting with lots of techniques. All right, so let me tell you one more thing. Why did the bunny's feet fall off? I want to address that. I want to address this before I go off and show you the projects. Okay, so these feet fell off. It's because, here's what happened. I was trying to pull them out of this. Let me put this behind a white piece of paper. I have this template and I made all the bunnies. And as I was pulling them out, some of them were stuck in there and the feet fell off. So here's why. When I was using my Brother ScanNCut to create this project, I used a blade depth of 7. But by the time I was done, it went down. It was vibrating. The blade was vibrating so much that it went down to a blade depth of I started with a blade depth of 8. And by the time I was done, the blade depth was down like below 7. So it was vibrating so much. So when you have a really thick material like this, one thing I recommend, and I just wanted to show you, is the deep cut blade. So this is a deep cut blade holder. It's a purple one, and it's pretty sharp. Deep cut blades have a better angle for cutting through. They have a 60-degree angle as opposed to a 45-degree angle that you have with a regular blade holder. So anyway, that's what I recommend for really thick material, or because it will work on a blade depth of 8. I say don't cut so many at once, and you won't get that problem of getting bunnies' feet falling off and this getting stuck. And third, another option when you're cutting thick material is that you could slow your speed down. So when I cut magnetic material, I slow my speed down, and then it keeps my thick materials from getting, like the blade holder, from vibrating too much. And it cuts through, because When something is really thick, it needs to turn. Okay, and it's really hard for the blade to turn. All right, so I'm just going to show you one thing about the blades, and then I'm done in this section. Okay, so my blade holder was at an 8 when it started. It vibrates so much because it's trying to cut this thick material, and it vibrates. There's a spring inside, and it ended up down below 7. Okay, so now I want to unscrew this and just show you something. This is the regular blade holder, 45-degree angle blades. I'm going to unscrew the deep cut blade holder and show you the difference in the angle, and so you can see. So that's why I probably would have been better off using, I wouldn't have used a 7 in this case. I would have used a lower blade depth because the material's not very deep, but I would have been better off with a deep cut blade. Then my bunny's feet wouldn't have fallen off. All right, so there's lots of things to experiment with Shrinky Dinks. I mean, just the possibilities are endless. Okay, so I did a tutorial the other day on using the Fable Friends stamp set with the Brother ScanNCut, and I made Shrinky Dinks. There's one of them, and I showed you several cards I created with the rain theme and put little ducks on the cards. So now I have some Easter treats to show you. I'm going to clean off my table, and I'm going to show you some Easter treats you can create with these little Shrinky Dinks and how they help decorate your projects. So see you in the next section. In conclusion, I'd like to share 7 projects with you so you can have ideas on how to use Shrinky Dinks that you create. So here are 2 little Easter treats. I'm always making Easter treats. The tag toppers are very simple. I use 2-inch bags. I'll link to those. I just used the Shrinky Dink from my other video, which I'll have in the related tutorials section below. I showed how to create the little ducks last time with using your SDX 125 and the Fable Friends stamp set. And that was my one little duck that didn't come out. But using the heat tool, as suggested by my crafty friends, I was able to straighten out my bent duck and use them on this project. Here are the little bunnies. That little bunny there was one of the bunnies I colored in Highland Heather. Okay, and then on this one, I put 3 different bunnies. I think that pink one is one of the ones I colored with the Sharpie markers, and that's Balmy Blue and Highland Heather. That sweet friend Sentiment is using this stamp set here, Welcome Easter. Okay, so I have 2 other tutorials on Welcome Easter stamp set on my channel. So if you're interested in just how to cut out stamped images, we did stamped images and we did layering stamped images in my tutorials. And I even showed you how to create these little layers with your ScanNCut and how to make it wobble, which is I'm going to show you in the next project. And another related tutorial, I did something with Brother Canvas Workspace, and I showed you how to curve the text and how to use a special font called Happy Rabbit and how to get that font. Okay, so be sure to see my related tutorials because there's so much more, to cover with just that one stamp set that if you haven't seen it yet, please check those out. Okay, so now back to the tutorial. So these are Shrinky Dinks that I put some stickers. I just used stickers from, I think they're from Hallmark. Let's see. There's little stickers I had, and I just put them on to balance out the Shrinky Dinks. Okay, this little lamb on a wobble spring is something that I showed how to make in another related tutorial, so I just mentioned. The tutorial was how to cut out and layer stamped images using your ScanNCut. But you have such a big embellishment, and it's really cute, and it's the focal point, right? For when you have these big embellishments. But then having the little Shrinky Dinks to just offset those, because you can't really put 2 of these on the top of the mini pizza box, that'd be too much. But having these little guys are so cute to balance it out. Okay, so inside of this mini pizza box, I put the duck from the Fable Friends stamp set. I used Pleased as Punch designer series paper. And I put these little Ghirardelli chocolate bunnies, chocolate hearts, little mini Tic Tacs. And on the bottom is some more Pleased as Punch designer series paper. Okay, another related tutorial. I guess I'll link to that too. I forgot about that. But I did teach how to decorate mini pizza boxes using your ScanNCut several times. I'll just link to the most recent tutorial on that subject. Just give me time though, because it does take me a long time to write my descriptions for these videos. I like to post them right away, but sometimes it takes me a while to go back and write and create all the links. Okay, here's another bunny on a wobble spring, but look how much fun it is to have little Shrinky Dinks also. And these are actually presents for adults, not kids, this particular one, but it's kind of like, I'm a big kid. I like using the little wobble springs. So Sweet Friend, and this has a happy hippo. That's a chocolate from Germany, and little hearts. and an egg. A Ghirardelli heart, Ghirardelli egg, and some mini Tic Tacs. I like to put mini Tic Tacs with a lot of things. Okay, so that's the more Shrinky Dink ideas. Okay, here's 2 cards I created. These cards are made with one of the free items you can get during Celebration. It's called the Stone 3D Embossing Folder. And this is a different shade of blue than that shade. This is Balmy Blue back here, the one in the Pleased as Punch. Pleased as Punch also has another shade of blue, and it's called Pool Party. And I use Pool Party behind here to emboss on these note cards. I used the little chick from the Welcome Easter stamp set, the little chick, and I used the little Shrinky Dink there to just give him somebody to play with, you know, in that card. And then this one is, again, I colored these with Stampin Blends. I also talked about that in other videos. And here are 2 little Shrinky Dinks and a layered bunny. Showed how to cut that out. Okay, with the Easter greetings. The Easter greetings is now using Fable Friends. And if you haven't known by now, I use anything and everything in my craft room. My projects may have pieces from, like this one box, Pleased as Punch Designer Series paper, Fable Friends. This one, Welcome Easter. Okay, so 3 different products in this one little box. But that's how I roll. I like to just mix it up. All right, so now, if you haven't seen it, I talked about making Shrinky Dinks the other day with your SDX 125. So if you're watching this video and you're like, what about the SDX 125? I showed how to create these ducks, the Shrinky Dink ducks, using the SDX 125. And today's tutorial was all about the CM350 or ScanNCut 2. And that is the one you put it on, when you put the little hole in it, using this punch, that's what you can do. You can make little trinkets. So that's the whole punch I used to make this little trinket. And then, you know, I give these out to, you know, paper pumpkin customers or thank you notes, and send them to friends who are needing encouragement. But I put them in bags, whether I'm going to send them or give them out. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them yet. So they're always in bags to protect them. And I label where I got them from. Okay, so lastly, I hope I said this earlier, but when you use Stazon ink, which you need for your Shrinky Dinks, be sure to use the Stazon cleaner. Because if not, your stamps are going to be stained. I had it right here, so you need the Stazon cleaner. I will link to the products I've used in this. All right. Oh, I have one more project. I almost forgot to show you my jelly bean jar. All right, so my jelly bean jar, I used Scent with Love, one of the stamp sets from a previous paper pumpkin kit. Some little stickers from the sheet still. I'm still using these stickers. And also I wanted to open up these boxes anyway, not just to show you, but I put a couple sheets of stickers in with my boxes as well. And I made a jelly bean jar. This is just a party favor jar, and you couldn't really put one of these big bunnies on top of the jar, right? That's too big. And even on the front of the jar, it would be too big. But these little Shrinky Dinks are perfect for the top of the jar. It looks like a little boy and girl bunny because it has like a green and a pink bunny, and I just used little hearts, and that's just decorating a jelly bean jar. So that was project number 7. All right. So I hope you're inspired by this Shrinky Dink project, and I hope you give it a try. You know, while if you're at home, you have some more time now. This is good family fun. So I hope you'll give Shrinky Dinks a try. Use them to decorate, use them for gifts, and all kinds of things. So that's all for now. Thank you for watching. This is The Papered Chef.